tossers have thrown it out the door with their behaviour this week. They should be ashamed of themselves. They should absolutely look at themselves in the mirror and wonder what the have they been doing. They were hissing at us and calling us cheats in the Lord's long room, and they have the gall to talk to us about the spirit of cricket. Absolute bullshit.
There's a big appeal that's hit him on the pad. He's out. Lions gone. New South Wales are 9 down. Onto Sydney Road, and it's hit a car. I think it's hit a car. What a way to bring up your 50.
All you want is to leave it all behind. Now there is a simple remedy to stay fit for all eternity.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I'm coming to you with my day 5 wrap of the first Ashes test, and it involves me checking out Fremantle. No, but actually, I'm here with Tim Wigmore, who's joined me on the show before. We're going to chat a little bit about the English perspective. Hi, Tim. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Manners. How's it going?
Oh, man, it's great to have you here because, when I been trying to make sense of what happened in the first test, I immediately thought of your book, your fantastic book on the story of Test cricket. And, you weave together, there we go, and you weave together such a beautiful tale of Test cricket. And in all the years I've been watching Test cricket, I've never really seen anything like I saw in that first test. How do you try and make sense of something like that?
Yeah, it was pretty extraordinary. I think, what was it, the shortest Ashes test since 1904, first over in 2 days in that, 121 years since. So no, it was pretty extraordinary. It was, it was a sense of kind of just go in terms of the tempo of, I suppose, the English batting, and a sense that kind of nothing, it was like you're watching highlights, a game on highlights the whole time. So it was quite kind of unsettling in that sense. Sense of a game played on fast forward. I mean, everyone talked about the Perth test last year, and obviously there were 70 wickets on day one, but then that calmed down, and India batted big and got 490 odd or whatever. So people were talking about that, and then that obviously just didn't happen at all. And also, I don't know, it's odd because all the things we know about modern Test cricket in Australia, which is that the Kookaburra ball does a lot for 25 overs, and then it actually really becomes a lot easier to bat after that. But if you're 7-8 down after either 30, you get no benefit of that. So it was a very, very strange, and one of those that, in a sense, is kind of hard to analyze because it has such a kind of unreplicable feel. England do crash and burn this team sometimes, but not quite ever in that manner before.
Yeah, and then you sort of add into it, you talk about the England batting collapse, but then for Travis Head to come out and do what he did, you just couldn't really imagine the way Australia plays, them chasing down 205 in a session. And it really only would be if Travis Head did it himself. And for him to go and do it on the back of what had already been an extraordinary turnaround in the game. It was just a dazzling series of events. And, you sort of look around the media box and chatting to people. No one really knew what hit them. So I sort of genuinely do think Ben Stokes would have been shell-shocked.
Well, he used that word himself, yeah. I think the interesting thing with Travis Head is that, yes, it's true. Obviously, he played very aggressively, but there was a method there. He was 3 or 14 balls before he started to go. He was, targeting the shorter boundary, trying to hit with the wind and so on. So does something like that, and it creates a kind of illusion of effortlessness. But there is a method to Travis Head and the way he plays, which I think was not always evident in England's approach. You saw. I think I said before the series, which I was really worried about, which completely happened, is just the amount of hooks in the air, which, actually probably a lot of those probably go for 6 in English grounds, but the grounds in Australia are huge, and that makes such a big difference. But again, it's people, that's not a surprise. People know the ground, the dimension of the grounds, but it didn't seem to have a bearing on England's approach. It's interesting because it was also a wicket that was pretty hard to sort of sit in and absorb pressure. I guess the only thing is if had Labuschagne and Steve Smith lasted a little longer in the first innings, we might have seen them kind of dig in and, add whatever, 80 and 30 overs, that kind of partnership. And it felt like they actually weren't that far away from getting to that point before then the kind of floodgates opened again. But apart from that little passage, the people who had success with the bat were those who played with a bit of daring.
In writing your book, Test Cricket, you can't have written about many crazier starts to an Ashes series, can you? I mean, I can't think of any.
Yeah, over such a prolonged time. I mean, the start of the 2023 Ashes was kind of pretty crazy, with England getting, declaring on the first day for just before 400 and so on, and then two week win for Australia. But that was kind of a, it was a 5-day Test match, and it had a bit more sense of normality to it. So I wouldn't say that. I mean, obviously people can talk about Steve Harmison why, the Rory Burns out at the first ball, the Ashes, those sorts of things. But over a whole Test, I think this is up there with the craziest the craziest matches and the most, just a sense of actually, as you also talk about the history of the Ashes and the precedents, but there was kind of no precedent for a lot of what was happening. It was just complete sense of chaos. And I think there's a sense of England bit punch drunk, basically, and not sure how to process that, really, which oddly enough might make it easier, because you could say, had it been a kind of more normal gaming, they'd been outplayed and lost by sort of 300 runs and everything had been kind of normal, maybe that is a bit harder to, in a way that's hard to come back from. Whereas this is just such a kind of, maybe it's such a freakish occurrence in some respects that, yes, obviously England should kind of, seek ways to learn from it and improve, but there's a sense that you maybe can't analyze it as much. Whereas if England had kind of played as they want to play and still been well defeated over a longer period, maybe that would be even more worrying from an English perspective. But yeah, it's a strange one, really.
I drew a parallel with the 2005 Ashes. People forget England lost the first Test, but they did throw a few punches. There was that famous, hitting Ponting above, Harmison hitting him, and they didn't win that Test match, but they certainly knew they were in the game. So I guess if you're England, you can look at that, and they had their chances, just didn't take them. But just on Travis Head's innings, there was sort of the instant reaction, oh, this is the best Ashes innings by an Australian ever. I don't think it's quite that, because the conditions, weren't bad by then, but it's up there, definitely chasing in the fourth innings. But where do you sort of fit it? I mean, you've got the Stokes innings. I sort of think of Steve Waugh's twin hundreds in 1997 at Old Trafford, when the Ashes seem to be heading back to the old enemy. I mean, I think it's up there, but I wouldn't quite have it the greatest.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to Victor Trumper, 1902, the first century before lunch in a Test match at Old Trafford, and still a feat that's barely been replicated before, and that was, hard batting conditions. And that's, kind of incomparable in some ways. And, how do you compare that with Travis Head? Although both opening batsmen, of course. There's a lot of, and I suppose because Australia, the kind of Australia's record in kind of tight run chases is not actually very good in Ashes history. So there's not really been an Australian equivalent of like the Gilbert Jessett innings or the Ben Stokes innings. And in a way, this wasn't actually quite that either, because Australia actually won by eight wickets. They won by so easily in the end, even though it was a difficult target. It seemed a difficult target when the innings started. I think that this innings is one that people will. And also, I mean, just the fact, 69 ball century, it's faster than anyone in English Test cricket history. And sort of so, which is funny because, England have kind of been chasing this Jessett record for 3 years since Bazball started. And yet Travis Head has kind of almost casually just in an afternoon just knocked it off without kind of, just almost unintentionally. Very, very special innings. And I think one that, you look at Travis Head now and his record in, the biggest times. I mean, it's really remarkable. You've got the World Test Championship final, you've got the World Cup final, Brisbane set the start of the Ashes 4 years ago as well. So an incredible record of these devastating innings in huge matches. So very, very special player. Although it's odd actually, he still hasn't got a century in an away Test match for Australia. He's got a neutral Test, but not an away Test, which is really kind of bizarre when you look at his record and his caliber as a player.
Yeah, the stat that really jumped out at me was that Australia, it's the first test team to chase down a target of over 200 in better than a runner ball. And all the talk about Bazball, and it was Trav, and even Marnus Labuschagne was going at a better than a runner ball. And, I was privileged to be there to see Travis Head's innings. And, going into that fourth innings, I thought it was 50-50. And so for Australia to just do it in a canter, it was incredible. Just on Mitchell Starc. So Mitchell Starc, I think, he's pretty close to Wasim Akram's test record. I think he needs a few wickets to overtake Wasim Akram. Yeah. Where do you think he fits in the sort of pantheon of great left arm fast bowlers?
Yeah, I think Mitchell Starc said this odd thing where, because of his one-day record, he's kind of been underrated slightly in Test match cricket, which is a bit odd to say for a guy with over 400 wickets. But I think this has been the sense he's been rated slightly below Pat Cummins and Josh Hazlewood, was actually he's got 100 more wickets than both of them. He's been more like just durable than both of them. He has this left arm angle. He's actually really improved, like deep into his 30s, obviously with the wobble ball and so on. So it's probably a sense we're only now appreciating him as a Test bowler, and clearly this sort of performance without Hazlewood or Cummins actually just elevates him even more. I mean, amongst left arm quits, yeah, I mean, you'd still take Wasim Akram above Starc for sure. Beyond that, I mean, Alan Davidson, an amazing cricketer, but just Starc's over twice as many wickets now. So yes, there's more Test matches played now, but that's, yes. I mean, Davidson, maybe you'd still take over. You probably would just about still take over Starc, but Starc is building a really formidable record. You have
we're actually thinking the same. We're thinking the same. We're thinking the same on this, because I thought of Davidson. I would just say I think Starc's a bit more reliable than Wasim Akram. If you look at across, Mitchell Starc hasn't gone missing in World Cup semi-finals or things like that. So I think
we're talking about in white ball cricket, right? They're both devastating, but Starc
just generally, I think Starc's more reliable, sort of day in, day out. Akram's at his brilliant best, probably a higher ceiling, but I sort of, I just think, no offense to Akram, we're just splitting hairs here, but I think Starc's probably just, you can rely him in a bit more in the big occasion.
Yeah, I'm still team Wazam on this, but I mean,
okay, good.
It's the fact it's a conversation. It's huge testament to Starc's work, really.
Yeah. So, huge performance from him. What's the reaction been like back home to this stinging defeat?
I mean, there's been an element of there's quite a lot of anger, but also an element that there's a sense of some of the public kind of turning on Bazball a little bit. I think the thing about the players not going to this pink ball warm up in Canberra is people are just like, what's going on? And the sense of England have kind of made their rules, and they've basically been very successful for the bulk of this regime. But there is a bit of a sense of like frustration, and a sense that England are kind of almost think they're kind of above the normal kind of laws of Test cricket, if you like, in terms of batting, the way you bat, the way you prepare, and all these things. I'm not saying that's fair necessarily, what I think, but I think there was quite a lot of anger, and there's kind of I think the other thing's interesting, of course, is this will be the fourth England series of this regime against either India or Australia, and they still haven't won a single one of those series. And if this series does sort of turn into 4-1 or whatever, or worse from an English point of view, then there'll be quite a lot of anger. The India series over the last summer is one of those where, yes, it was a great series, 2-2, which was a kind of a fair result for sure. But actually, you look at India, they lost to New Zealand 3-0 last year. They're going to probably lose to South Africa 2-0 this time. England also lost 4-1 there last year. So it's like actually that result, which at the time was seen as okay, actually is kind of being reevaluated in a less flattering context as well. So yeah, there's a bit of a sense of where's England's marquee achievement of this regime. Actually the best result for Bazball pretty clearly was 3-0 in Pakistan in 2022, the end of that year, the end of the 6 months into the regime. That's been the peak so far of the regime, and actually since last couple of years, the results, the 4-1 defeat in India, dropping Test at home to Sri Lanka wasn't great as well. So there's been some the draw with India. There actually has been some quite underwhelming results for a while, and obviously with Zach Crawley, the kind of poster boy of the regime, with him getting a pair, that feeds a bit of anger as well. The sense that his game is so well suited for Australia, which actually he is a good player of pace, and getting a pair against Starc, anyone could. That doesn't change it. He obviously batted brilliantly in the 2023 Ashes, but it's also true that in 4 tests, Australia's average is 20 now. So yeah, there's a lot of questions being asked, and a sense that the kind of goodwill around the team is probably quite a lot less than it was a year or 18 months ago as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the record for Baz's team in the last 26 tests is 12 wins, 12 losses, and 2 draws. So yeah, they've got to turn that around if they want to keep their jobs. Otherwise, you'd have to imagine they'll have to make changes. But they've been pretty defiant. I mean, as you mentioned, they're only sending Bethel, Tongue, and Potts to the PM's 11 game being played with the pink ball. And you can't imagine it would have hurt Crawley or Root or Duckett or Pope just to play against a pink ball under lights and get a bit better at picking it up in a match situation. But they've deemed it not important. There have been reports that they've been playing golf and doing a few other things the last few days.
President Karaja was playing golf as well, of course. I mean,
everybody. They're all playing golf, trust me.
That's not an English thing.
No, not at all. But I think they have been seen up at Jindalup Golf Course, I think, yesterday. Anyway, but what's really looming now is this second test, because reports today, Pat Cummins was bowling with a pink ball in in Cricket Central in Sydney. Josh Hazlewood was seen bowling. Joe Richardson is expected to play maybe in the Australia A game in the early December. So, Australia's going to have more artillery probably at the back end of this series. And Tim, I just think, pink ball games can be a bit of a lottery. So if England get on the right side of it.
People say that, but Australia always managed to win them, basically. But yeah.
No, you spot on. So, obviously now having lost the first one, England they've got to throw everything at this pink ball. So it's surprising they'd pass up an opportunity to get some practice against it, because they just can't go down 2-0. I mean, it would just be disastrous.
No, that's right. I mean, I know there's a theory that the bounce in Canberra is so much lower than in Brisbane that it's kind of a different conditions, which is fair enough. It's true, but I agree with pink ball. I guess in a sense, you there's a certain kind of stubborn admiration for England, because in the two worlds, let's just say England lose in Brisbane regardless. Well, in these two worlds, if they go to Canberra and prepare, they're getting a little bit more sympathy than if they don't go to Canberra. So clearly England are not being led by optics. They're doing what they're kind of sticking to their guns, which has been the mantra of the regime all along. So in that sense, there's probably you can have a bit of admiration that they're definitely, often in previous England regimes, there's a sense of they've actually been criticised for kind of pandering to the crowd and doing what's the kind of expedient thing, or and kind of swaying in the wind. England are not doing that, and possibly of being too stubborn in not doing that in various things. But that's very much that's not going to change. And so they are by doing things differently, you set yourself up to get attacked more if you fail. That's true in anything really. And England are by this approach, they are creating this risk for themselves for sure. But I don't think McCullum or Stokes think in those lines. They're just thinking what's going to give us the best chance. They're not thinking in terms of what the media are going to say, which is fair enough. So yeah, that's kind of where we ended up with. But yeah, I mean, clearly a pink ball, the pink ball. England actually haven't played that much pink ball cricket. I think the last was in 2023 in New Zealand, so 2.5 years. So yeah, there's it's going to create there's going to be some challenges, and the kind of lottery idea of the pink ball test, I mean, there's a little bit in it, but I think that's a bit overblown in terms of we know the rhythms of the game, and actually England had one very good win where they managed those rhythms well, in terms of in New Zealand they got sort of 3:30 on the first day, and then they declared late to give themselves a crack at bowling with a pink ball that evening and kind of to open the game. So yeah, there are actually, yes, there's ways you can play, and it's not just a case of we were unlucky to be batting then, and so on. That there's a bit more to it than that. And obviously, facing Mitchell Starc under lights is really as tough as it gets. Apart from facing Wasim, of course, which would have been even harder.
Yeah, absolutely. He didn't get that opportunity. You speak of optics. So Usman Khawaja put out an Instagram post today. I'd be curious to get a neutral's opinion on this. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see it. But he put out a gallery of photos from the first test, and the last one was the view of the golf course. Now, I don't mind him playing around a little bit. I guess you want your sportsmen to have a personality, but I don't know if you want to just poke the bear of the Australian public too much. You know, I get it, but I just think maybe if I'm Usman Khawaja, that's not the most sensible thing to do. Let people have their opinions of that, and then just do your talking on the field.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing you expect from England, really. It reminds me of an interview that Rob Key did once when he was he told the players to stop kind of bang on about golf so much, and he did this from a golf course. A bit of kind of that energy to Khawaja's post there you've just shown. Yeah, I actually think I mean, Usman Khawaja's been a really fine player for Australia, and I think he actually should have played far more test matches than he did. I think there was this. You look at guys like Joe Burns and Marcus Harris and like Cameron Bancroft, like guys who played between them a lot of tests, and you're like, Khawaja was a better player than all these guys. He should have played probably 40 test matches. But that all said, it feels to me like he's really nearing the end, and I actually think even with the catch he dropped, and I don't know, it seems to me Australia probably better side. If he's not in it at the moment, there's different formations that you could do to open up options. There's Josh English, there's Bo Webster, even Mitchell Marsh. There's done different ways to arrange things. Bit more dynamism, and also there's a sense also with the pitches. I think is a point that actually playing the kind of old school Khawaja way on these wickets is really, really difficult. And actually, batting 150 balls and getting 70 is really, really difficult. And therefore, actually having a guy like Inglis who's a bit more positive, and then maybe open with Travis Head or opening with Mitchell Marsh and keeping Head down the order. Those kind of options actually just give you the chance to play in a different way. And it might be with the pink ball test as well. You want to manage, you talked about managing when you're bowling, or to do that, you need to score at a certain rate, because if you're batting on day one and you're 200 for 4 off 70 overs, you can't declare then. You haven't got enough runs. So you're kind of, all those sorts of things. So it just seems to me like he's had a really fine career. And of course this kind of new chapter for him began 4 years ago in the Ashes, and maybe he probably wanted the kind of farewell at Sydney, but that doesn't happen to a lot. Many players do not get their dream farewell, and I just wonder if Australia will be ruthless enough and say, actually, no, we're moving on. Kind of, sorry, was it?
Yeah, I think England would prefer to see him on the team. All right, Tim. Well, thank you for joining me. Last question, though. It was Ian Botham's 70th birthday yesterday. He got to celebrate it in Perth. Just your tribute to Lord Botham.
Well, I recently did my list of 30 best Ashes cricketers of all time for the Telegraph. I ended up with Beefy at number 7, which, I think obviously unbelievable deeds, and one Ashes 81, but also before that in 78-9 and then in 85 and 86-7. So the standout 81, but actually did a lot in other series as well. I suppose his sort of decline post 30 was quite long as an all-rounder in Ashes cricket. I think looking at Keith Miller, I think does just shade him, just his longevity and his kind of range. I think a little bit higher than Botham's, but Botham an unbelievable player. And actually, you look at historically, all rounds is probably the one area England generally have had a bit of an edge over Australia. Botham, Flintoff, Stokes, and he's sort of absolute part of that folklore. And his sort of legend will never go. It will only grow, really.
Yeah, well, Tim, thank you for joining me. Listeners, and Ashes tourists, if you're traveling around Australia, grab a copy of Tim's book, Test Cricket. It'll be the perfect accompaniment, and I think you might need to add a chapter for this series when it's all said and done. So, Tim, thank you for joining me, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks very much, man.